Hello and welcome to Views on News. I'm your host Rafi Iqbal, and in today's show we'll be deliberating on elections in a neighboring country. Of course, as we know, it is election year all around the globe in some of the major countries of the world. Earlier we saw the elections taking place in Pakistan, of course. Now we're seeing that elections are to be held in India. And of course, after that, we're going to be seeing the American elections as well. So with that, there's a lot of dynamics that need to be discussed regarding the elections in India. Of course, we know that there's a grand alliance which was initiated by the Congress against the BJP. In that regards, there's a lot of dynamics to discuss when we talk about the elections in India. Firstly, the manifestos being presented by the BJP. Of course, we've seen that they had some of their agendas completed as well, such as the Ram Mandir, and there were also other narratives that they had been building, which they worked on and were quite successful. But with that, we've also seen there's a rise in Islamophobia. There's marginalizing the minority communities in India, especially. We see there's been religious and ethnic clashes as well, and along with that, we've also seen in the recent days there's some reports circling and circulating on media as well, specifically social media as well. There was an article by The Guardian and there was an Al Jazeera report as well that talked about the economic situation in India, and along with that, the extraterritorial and extrajudicial killings that India has conducted in the past while. And we'll be deliberating on all these aspects, and of course we'll also be talking about the unemployment and job creation issues that India is facing and the economic prospects that are happening there regarding these elections. And of course we'll also be talking about the backdrop of these elections, how the political atmosphere is in place in India currently, and the future implications that these elections are going to hold for the region and for the country itself. To talk more about this, I'll introduce the analyst that we have in the studio. First, we have joined by Altaf Hussain Wani Saab, who is a human rights activist, and along with that he is the chairman of Kashmir Institute of International Relations. Along with that, on Skype we have with us Mansoor Ahmed Khan, who is a former ambassador. Thank you both for your time and joining us in the show and being part of the conversation. I'll start off our conversation from Mr. Mansoor Ahmed Khan. Considering the elections in India, it's a 1.4 billion population, one of the biggest democracies in the world. 970 million eligible voters that are going to be taking part in these elections, and there's a huge youth bulge that is eligible to vote as well. Considering the polarization that we see in India, we saw a lot of ethnic clashes in the recent past. We saw a lot of new developments that come on a daily basis, such as I'll recently cite the Al Jazeera report that talks about the 80% of the population of India suffering economic hardships, and of course unemployment. They also talked about how 65% of the literate population in India is facing a joblessness and unemployment. What's your take on these elections, and how do you see these elections playing out for the youth of the country that are currently facing economic hardships and unemployment?
Yeah, thank you very much. First of all, I'm grateful that you have invited me in this program for a very important discussion. Yes, this is the year when I think almost as many as 50 countries or more than 50 countries are hosting elections, and therefore it is being called the year of the elections. The next election now, a very important election, is in our neighborhood, India. In Indian elections, Pakistan has always been a very central focus of the elections, of the campaigns. This time also Pakistan will continue to remain, all the indications are that Pakistan will continue to be the center of campaign of Indian elections. Basically, there are 2-3 forces which will be the two or three themes which will play an important role in Indian elections. Hindutva, rising Hindutva in India, Hindutva has always been part of Indian politics even before country's independence, and rising Hindutva in the early part of 20th century, I think it was the main reason for that became motivation for the Muslims to demand a separate state where they can lead their lives according to their own their religious values, their cultural values, and their own ideology. But Hindutva has continued to rise in India for first 50 years. Congress ruled the country. The forces of Hindutva remain suppressed. But gradually, as BJP came into power in 90s, when BJP had more moderate leaders like Atal Bihari Vajpayee or LK Advani, the forces of extremism, Hindu extremism, were quite suppressed inside India. But as Modi rose to power and his party rose to power, this version of leadership rose to power, which includes Narendra Modi himself, or leaders like Amit Shah, or their national security advisor Ajit Doval. We are explicitly seeing rise of Hindutva, proliferation of Hindutva everywhere, and then we are seeing totalitarianism rising in Indian state. In India, BJP is trying to dominate politics in every possible manner. Its Minister of Defense has publicly acknowledged that they have been responsible for extraterritorial, extrajudicial killings, not only in Pakistan but in some Western countries. And at the same time, it is trying to, on the domestic front, it is trying to remove the leadership of other political parties, as Arvind Kejriwal, one of the most popular leaders among the commons, has been arrested and is politically struggling at this moment, just before the elections. So I think elections in India will be, the world is watching. It will be a big event. Although India is economically rising in last 2 or 3 decades, but there are contradictions that at the same time Hindutva is rising, mistreatment of minorities or atrocities against minorities is rising, and then we don't see any democracy in the world which is going for totalitarianism. India is going towards totalitarianism or totalitarian state rule. So I think Pakistan, as a neighbor, will have to watch Indian elections very closely.
Right, and Mr. Mansoor, as you mentioned Hindutva in the conversation, I'd like to ask you, there was a promise made regarding the Ram temple, and of course there was the Citizenship Amendment Act as well. That was a furtherance of the Hindutva policy, and they've achieved these goals, but at the expense of their national peace and national unity. How would you comment on that, considering that India claims itself to be a secular democracy?
Yeah, you know, this is very strange that India, which claims itself constitutionally as a secular democracy, but at the same time we have seen in the last 20, 30 years, 30 years ago or slightly more than 30 years ago, Babri Mosque was demolished, a symbol of Indian history, a symbol of Muslim values, is an Islamic worship place. It was demolished, and recently we have seen that this Indian government, very close to the elections, has gone ahead with the construction of the new temple in its place. So this is just to indicate that how strong the Hindu sentiments, Hindutva sentiments in the population are there, and BJP or BJP's leadership, led by Narendra Modi, wants to encash these sentiments in favor of an electoral results, combined with anti-Pakistan statements, anti-Pakistan slogans, and showing that, look, India is acting very strongly against Pakistan through these extraterritorial actions or extraterritorial and extrajudicial killings, which in fact are violation of the international law. I think they will try to turn the results of this election into their favor.
Right, of course, Mr. Mansoor Ahmed Khan, point very well made. Of course, as we know and we've seen in the past as well, that when election gears up in India, the anti-Pakistan rhetoric further increases. I'd like to include Altaf Hussain Wani in the conversation as well, and I'd like to ask your views. Considering the Hindutva ideology in India that we've been seeing over the past years, and considering the furtherance of this ideology and the impact it is making, and of course, there's going to be a huge youth bulge that is going to be taking part in these elections. They're eligible to vote. The Hindutva ideology itself, it doesn't fill bellies, to be honest, if we're talking rationally and practically. It's not going to be helping that youth that is going to be looking for jobs now, that is going to be looking to make their careers. Considering that, how do you think this ideology is going to play in these elections? Do you think it is going to create chaos just to gain another term in office? And considering that, I'd also like, this is the third term of the Modi government. This is going to be the third term for Modi, and he's already 73 years of age.
See, Indian elections always have an impact on the region as well as the Pakistan and international politics also. The current Indian elections, which are being fought by the Narendra Modi for the third term in the office. You see, the kind of narrative which Narendra Modi and his associates built right from the 2014 onwards, that have engaged more and more people in India with this Hindutva ideology. And this was the center point of the BJP RSS ideology, which galvanized support in the North India, stigmatizing Muslims, this indiscriminate use of force and hate against Muslims in the North India and also in the northeastern states and all that. And that provided a BJP a base in the North India. They won the elections, and at that time they had two slogans mainly. One was the Modi's Gujarat model development. He promised that I had developed the Gujarat, and then the Ram Mandir was the second one. And now we saw in the current elections, when Modi started the election campaign, it was started by the inauguration of the Ram Mandir.
Yes.
The first, it was Ram Mandir which was inaugurated, and it was the start of the election campaign. Then Modi came to Srinagar, he came to Jammu and then to Srinagar. He said, the abrogation of Article 370 and 35A, we have made complete normalcy in Kashmir, and there is development in Kashmir and all that. So that was the another twist in it, and to give the Indians a view that the Kashmir is now totally in our control, and the current moment in Kashmir is under our control, and there is peace and normalcy in Kashmir. This was always an election stunt by the Modi. And then you see the leaders of political parties using the Enforcement Directorate, using the NIA against the political opponents like Kejriwal, confiscating the party funds of Congress and others, and putting leaders behind the bars. Is just Modi wants everything to go in BJP way.
Yes.
That is what he wants, and he wants to complete the agenda of Hindu Rashtra. What is it? And it will be unfortunate if Modi wins again, which the signs are there that Modi will win, because the opposition in India is fragmented. It's weak, it's leaderless opposition. It doesn't have that much of weight in it to counter the Modi's agenda. They don't have a clear agenda against Modi. So that is why I see in the north, and there is something in south against Modi, and there are strongholds of Congress as well as the local parties. But in north, I don't see any those parties making any compact. And if there was anybody, it was Kejriwal in Delhi and Punjab and other places who could made, and they have made him casualty right now. And this is how the BJP wants to go ahead, and it's a departure. It will be unfortunate because it is a total departure from democracy to an autocracy.
Right.
Because it will be an Hindu Rashtra with all that, and the Muslims and other minorities, the people in Manipur, the Adivasis, what they are facing now, they will face more in future. But the one thing what you said about the youth, unfortunately the polarization, the Modi and his associates have created in India through the use of religion on one hand, and the through use of corporate media, projecting India as the rising India, projecting India as its economy is rising. It's one of the topmost economies in the, becoming topmost economy of the world. But then we see the reports which came in most recently that how Indians live poorly. The Indians, some of the Indians, the 5% of the Indians have the total wealth of India.
Actually, 1%.
1% of the total wealth of the India, and then other people have just what they have. We know how they live. That report indicates that, and how the people in the inner sides of India, people just see the silicons of Bangalore, Bombay, and Hyderabad. They don't see the inner India, the next light belt. They don't see the other places where the insurgencies are on, where the people are struggling for the control over natural resources, which the BJP government has taken over, eroding their agriculture, eroding the environment of those places, eroding all of that, their identities, and taking away their natural resources. But that all has an impact in these elections, and I think the youth of India will have to rise. That is the thing. If they want to save the Indian democracy, if they want to save the Indian secularism for which India is proud of, that they propagate that we are a secular country, we are a democratic country. If the Indian youth want to save that identity, they have to come forward. They have to counter these radical elements like Modi and others, because otherwise this radicalization will have more polarization in Indian society, and it will take a toll on India. And that will impact the neighboring countries also, because India is a huge country, it has a huge population. If there is more and more the kind of suppression against minorities, then they have to flee away from the India. Then the neighboring countries will have to face those consequences at that.
That's very right. You very rightly made your point, but I'd like to ask that considering that Modi has been furthering the Hindutva agenda, he has been very determined with all of his political tactics as well regarding the abrogation of Article 370 and 35A. We saw the ethnic clashes, the Ram Mandir, but what I'd like to ask is that none of the other political leaders from the BJP, they think that violating international laws, violating the commitments that India has made to the international community at the expense of political voters, or at the expense of their political vote bank, do none of them seem fit or see that sanity should prevail and international laws and agreements should not be broken, and the essence of India's structure, the essence of India's whole political system, which focuses on secularism, which focuses on democratic norms, aren't they being undermined by Modi's policies of him being the savior of India?
You see, the way the Modi articulated the politics in India, unfortunately in this era, there is no other political leader in the opposition as well as in the BJP to counter Modi. And the next tier of leadership which is coming in the BJP, which are rising, they are more than Modi. They are Modi plus. You say Adityanath Yogi, you see Rajnath Singh, or you say the Amit Shah and others, they are Modi plus. So there is no way that there can be anyone in the BJP to come forward and to say that these policies of BJP are very detrimental to the country, they are detrimental to the party and all that. Because they think these are the policies by which they have come to the power. These are the policies through which they have, in 2019, they got the 2/3 majority in the House. And these are the policies, they are thinking that they will have 400 plus seats in the parliament. And so there is no one. But unfortunately in the opposition also, what I see in Indian opposition, they have failed to counter this Indian narrative. That is why I say the India is in the lap of this Hindu Rashtra. Because all the parties, when they try to talk about the Hindutva, that they think that they will lose the vote bank. They will also lose the vote bank by that. They don't tackle the Modi on that front. They just criticize Modi on that he used this for Jindal, he used it for this and that. These are not the things concerning to the people of India. But the things to concern the people of India which can educate the masses of India, which once the this Gandhi did a yatra from Delhi to Bangalore on
Yes.
foot. He traveled from Srinagar to that place, and then that paid him, because the Congress won the Karnataka elections. That he tried to do that, but after that we again see no one coming forward trying to knock the doors of the conscience of the Indians like this, that what the BJP has done, because each and every person who speaks of democracy, who speaks of democratic values, who speaks of human rights, they find their way behind the bars. Be
Right.
those the human rights defenders, be those the analysts, be those even the television anchors and all those, they find themselves out of India or behind the bars. So
Right.
India has been taken over by these radicals. This is
Right.
unfortunate for Indians, and now the Indians, youth, the educated youth who say we are the IT masters and we have done so much, they have to come forward, they have to deal with this situation and tell to the nation that this Hindutva will lead us to nowhere but to disaster.
Well, we hope sanity prevails. In that regard, I'd like to move towards Mansoor Ahmed Khan. Sir, I'd like to ask you what are your views regarding the whole scenario, considering that the Hindutva ideology is not going to fill bellies for the Indian youth, of course, and not just youth. When we talk about the whole population, the Hindutva and RSS ideology is not going to be filling their bellies. It's not going to be providing them with job opportunities, and it's not going to be solving the issue of unemployment for them. But at the same moment, I'd like to ask you as well, the second question would pose towards how the political victimization is taking place in India. And in that regard, the grand alliance that has been formed by the Congress, what role do you think that is going to play in these elections?
Yeah, actually, since the Modi came into power, the opposition political parties have been trying to form alliances. They received partly some success in past elections, but generally the narrative of bringing Hindus together, because Hindutva is in the Indian mindset. If you look at the past 2 or 3 centuries, their Indian psyche is filled with the mindset that they have been ruled by either Muslims or by British for 1,000 years, and that 1,000 years psyche actually brings the emotions or sentiments that India should now be a Hindu state and it should be ruled by Hindu political parties. And that kind of whenever the Narendra Modi takes some steps which tries to show Hindu power, in terms of political sense, or in politically inside India, when he shows the powers of Hindu ideology, large number of population of Hindus is attracted towards that ideology. Yes, some educated people who believe in religious tolerance, who believe in multipolarity, may vote for other parties. But generally, even if a big alliance comes against, pitches against BJP, Narendra Modi and his party, and since his party has now been in power for 10 years in the center, and before that he has ruled the state of Gujarat for at least 2 or more than 2 terms. So I think they have that kind of edge in terms of leading BJP towards an election win. Nothing can be said about the election conclusively, because it is very difficult these days to forecast or to exactly predict the voting patterns. And let's hope, we should hope in the interest of democracy, in the interest of mutual coexistence, in the interest of human values of humanity, that the opposition to BJP's opposition does well in the elections. But so far, realistically speaking, the indicators are that these forces of extremism sometimes drive the population very well, where in India, where there is no education, and where Pakistan card also plays very effectively. And if you look at how Modi has tried to play these cards in, for example, Indian occupied Kashmir, where large number of occupation forces have been there, it is one of the highest militarized and securitized zone in the world, where every kind of atrocity is being committed by the occupation forces, and where India is also, Indian government, central government is also taking measures for demographic changes, longer term demographic changes. So I think it is trying to show to its voter that it offers, it has an agenda where it can guide India towards a big international role. This also brings arrogance in Indian attitude. That is why we see that while these measures clearly show violation of international laws, violation of humanitarian values, but international community has not reacted to these developments in the way they should have because of India's economic value. So I think
Right.
there is a point where I think international community should also take cognizance of what has been happening in India. Like international opinion we have seen in the last few weeks has gone against the actions taken by Israel. So we should hope that after this election, an international reaction will also come towards these kind of extremist policies which are being pursued by Narendra Modi and his team in the Indian politics.
Right, thank you. Very articulate with your views, of course, Mr. Mansoor Ahmed Khan, former ambassador. Thank you for your insights. And of course, this comes as sanity should prevail. And of course, the international community is also putting pressure on India to stop its atrocities that it is committing with impunity and of course with a lot of arrogance. In that regard, I'd like to ask you, Mr. Altaf Zanmani, we've seen that the atrocities that India is committing, it is no secret. The whole world is it is very much known to the whole world. The atrocities they're committing in illegally occupied Kashmir, the atrocities they're committing against the ethnic minorities there. We saw the clashes in Manipur and other parts of India as well. And then we saw that there's a lot of resistance towards the Sikh community as well. So they're targeting different minority groups. And the international community has applied pressure on India to stop what it is doing, because it's a clear act of fascism what they're doing. We also saw that it was a statement from Volker Turk that they want to see free and fair elections, but the Indian foreign minister responded that it is up to India to decide. And we've seen in a lot of spaces they're being very arrogant with how they're treating their diplomatic relations. Do you think this Hindutva ideology and all is going to isolate India, or what kind of a message or image it is giving to the outside world of what is going on in India? It seems like they're going to do whatever they can on their soil.
Unfortunately, West has also failed in its actions to make accountable the perpetrators of human rights violations, as we thought they could have done in the case of Gaza, they could have done in the case of Kashmir, they could have made India an example.
Yes.
But unfortunately, they did not. They did not condemn the India. They did show the concerns at some point of time, but they never condemned India. They never made India accountable. And that's what made India always arrogant. You tell that it's Indian foreign minister, it's up to the India to make the actions. And we have seen more responses from India in past, as asking the High Commissioner that your report on Kashmir was malicious and fallacious in comfort zone and all that. So India has never taken serious any international advice which she gets in order to improve its human rights record. Unfortunately, the Indian government and Indian media is projecting India the otherwise, not these things. And we have seen, like in the Manipur, what happened in the Manipur and all that, and what is happening on daily basis with the Dalits and other communities. But the way the international order is being run at current time, the way we saw Israel goes away from its not being condemned, not being made accountable for its crimes against humanity in Gaza, the way they have done there, and the similar is going with the India. And this will not help India. Unfortunately, we have seen that Indian society as a whole has become now intolerant society.
Yeah.
It was primarily these were the Indian forces which were given impunity through black laws who were committing human rights violations in Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir and also in the Manipur and other places.
Now we see civilian mobs
But
doing
now
that.
we say the vigilantes. Now we say the people, each and every corner of India, making a Muslim man half naked and snatching his everything there. We could see that people are being branded as state and they are being killed, they are being harassed, they are being tortured everywhere in India. And the vilification of Muslims and other minorities throughout India is a new normal now. So this will have a larger impact in future for the Indian society. As I earlier said, that though the BJP will win the elections, but India will lose. India will lose in future, as the Indian already we have seen in international. You have seen the Canadian response to Indians killing of the Sikh leader there, and then Americans also condemning for that what's happened there. And now the Rajnath Singh saying that we have done it. Clearly comes with this another arrogant statement from a defense
Arrogant
minister of
and
India.
ignorant.
Yeah. And such kind of things will earn India a bad name. Already they have a bad name, but it will earn further. Then the people outside the world will come out against India, against this saffron terror is now spreading beyond the borders of India. If the international community doesn't step in, if they don't condemn the India, if they don't put any restriction on it, it has already crossed the boundaries of India. It has reached to the Canada. It has reached to the, we have seen what happened in Leicester. It has reached to the, now in United States also. But it will further establish itself in those societies, and those societies who deem themselves to be democratic and tolerant societies, those societies will have to face the music if they don't make India accountable in Kashmir and in India.
Well, very right and very articulate. Of course, this is what we're seeing is happening, and what has been happening over the past years and what is now happening in the future as well. I'd like to include Brigadier Retired Ahmed Saeed Minhas, who is a senior analyst who has joined on us on Skype. And I'd also like to take your comment on what you think is going on regarding the elections in India. We know that as the elections near there, we see the anti-Pakistan rhetoric increasing and further increasing. We see that that's what the BJP focuses its elections on. They don't focus on their economy. They don't focus on creating job opportunities. They don't focus on health, education. They don't focus on facilitating their population at all. But their main focus is anti-Pakistan narrative, which they focus on a lot and they work on a lot. In that regards, we've also seen there was the sidelining of the political opponents that the BJP had in India. And of course, after that, we saw, if we talk about the diplomatic rows that India has had in the recent past, the killing of Hardeep Singh Nijjar, the Canadian Prime Minister alleged that India was involved behind that. In regard to the US, we saw that an attempt was thwarted by the US agencies, and they also alleged that India was involved in that. And the most recent, there was a report by the Guardian which claimed that India was behind extrajudicial killings in Pakistan. What's your take on that? How would you comment on these developments, and how would you comment on India's arrogance and the narrative that it is making and the impacts that it would have for India itself in the future?
Yes, I'd like to comment on the Indian elections which are going to happen soon. There are certain number of observations, as you already highlighted. Whenever the elections are there, especially as we saw in 2019 and before that in 2014 also. In 2019, we saw that the Balakot incident happened, and that was used basically for winning the elections, creating an anti-Pakistan hype. Now, at this particular moment also, we are watching that Pakistan is being projected at the Indian media level as well as the foreign media level also, in which Pakistan has been blamed for state sponsoring the terrorism, unfortunately, which is totally baseless, and the world did not buy that idea. On the contrary, we know that the Canadians, followed by the Americans, and later on by the UK Prime Minister also, they gave very strong kind of evidences in which the BJP-led government, which is led by the Modi, which is the founder of the RSS, the fascist Nazi political party, it was found to be sponsoring the terrorism, and Pakistan also faced the same kind of executions here in Pakistan, and the law which takes the direct orders from the Modi, they have been following the lines which the KGB, CIA, or the Mossad they follow as to execute their opponents wherever they exist in the world. But luckily, the Canadians first, followed by the Americans, they located this conversations and found out that how the BJP government led by the Modi is exporting terrorism all around the world. As you said in The Guardian also, there is a perception being built by the Modi government that perhaps it is the fourth largest economy of the world, which is a fake thing. Previously also, as I said, that the Modi has been building upon the different narratives which goes into the favor of Hindutva, and of course the BJP. They've been using the social media, and they've been planting number of the social media network sites in the Europe also, in which the fake kind of narratives were being generated. We know that as per the Guardian report now, it's almost like 1% of the Indian population. They're controlling 40% of the resources of the India, and it's almost like more than 4 crore people. They're living beyond the, below the poverty line, and 65% of the youth are found to be outside the offices. They do not have any job. But yes, it is also true that the Indians have been getting $100 billions of the trade because the West and the West Europe and led by the US, they wanted to have an anti-Chinese counterweight in the South Asia, so that to checkmate whatever the China was, going out of its border through the economic measures. So now it's all seen that the BJP led by the Modi have been creating fake things, and they've been projecting India as a peace saver or the democracy, or maybe you call it a secular state, but it's all gone in vain. Now, if you allow me, I can cover the manifesto also, which has been just unveiled a few days back, in which there are 3 main things which I like to highlight. The first one is, of course, a very good thing that Modi promised that 2036 Olympics will be brought into the India. Yes, sounds good. Then the anti-corruption drive. Yes, it's all sound good. Uniform education policy sounds good. But at the same time, there are 2 main things which will ensure that the BJP continues to rule India with all the kind of fascist and the hardliner policy in times to come also. The first thing is that one election, one India. One election, one India means that on the same day, if not the same day, at least within a span of 1 month, they'll have the elections of the state as well as the nation of the Lok Sabha elections also. That means to say that in a very short span of time, the BJP leaders who are like ultra nationalists and ultra rightists, who are the religious extremists, also followers of the Hindutva, they'll be, by moving out the extremists of the BJP to go out into the field and do not let any minority, especially those, or especially from the Congress also, to come and contest the BJP opponents. So they want to, they want to restrain the election into very short span of time. Otherwise, the state elections and the Lok Sabha elections used to spread all over 5 years, and during those 5 years, the central government had to look after the regional, the state parliaments also, so that to look after their interests. So when they are won in the states also, and into the Lok Sabha also, you can well imagine as to how the Modi intends ruling the things. Last but not the least, the most important thing in which the Hindutva will be dominated upon all the minorities is the uniform civil code, which authorizes the Modi government to, as per the Article 44 of the Indian Constitution, to have a common or uniform civil code, but it's not the fundamental right. It is not the constitutional right, but it is basically the personal rights. And these personal rights, if they become uniform, you can well imagine that the 80% of the population, which is a Hindu population, will like to dominate or will like to impose their own laws onto the minorities, including Sikhs, including the Christians, the Muslims, and the other Parsis and all those minorities. If they do not, their leaders have been saying that they leave the India and go to those places or those countries where they can exercise their religious rights. So these kind of things are leading Indians or leading India through the BJP to become one Hindu nation country leaving behind the secular, the slogan which the Indians used to carry. And I think that this won't go into the favor of the minorities in India. And I think the world should take note of it and take a strong reaction, and unnecessarily supporting India won't go into the favor of world peace in general and the South Asian peace in particular. Yeah.
For how the conversation has taken shape, it's more of like Hindutva ideology being used as a political tactic to increase BJP's vote bank, and they're going to be using these tactics to garner their votes. And I personally think that wouldn't it be unfair to the youth of India and to the peace-loving people in India? I'm sure there would be a major population that does not want to be a part of BJP's narrative, the BJP's violence and the BJP's Hindutva ideology. But don't you think it's unfair to that Indian population that they're being feeded this anti-Pakistan narrative, they're being feeded this Hindutva ideology, when on the other hand they're not being given any economic opportunities, there's no welfare work being done for them, there's no actually work that's being done for the youth's welfare and to provide them the opportunities so they can flourish in their lives. Instead, they've just been giving this ideology and this manifesto and this narrative, and they're being told to fill their bellies with it.
You're right. 65% of the youth, if they're not given their rights to have respectable jobs and to earn bread for their families, of course, they're not going to buy, in that particular sense, anti-Pakistan slogans. But if you see any Indian movie in which the Muslims are shown as Bhai culture, in which they are shown as vagabonds, as they're shown as like terrorists. Similarly, the anti-Pakistan movies also, in which the anti-Pakistan narratives are shown as if they are the peace-loving country, and the Muslims living in Pakistan especially, they're not the peace-loving, and anything happening inside India, including the terrorist activities or whatever bad happens into the India, especially in Kashmir, they start blaming Pakistan right from even the dust does not settle by that time, and the media and the politicians, they start taking positions against Pakistan. But the thing is that the social media and the other media and the Pakistan's the true diplomacy, I would say, and these media, of course, as the anchor person of your stature, we have been projecting the right thing so that not only the youth of India takes the other perspective, the leftist perspective, instead of buying the rightist perspective of the RSS, the political face of the RSS, that means to say the BJP. And yes, of course, when they do not get their rights, especially as you've seen the farmers sitting in New Delhi and protesting against what the kind of rights or kind of prices they get there for the crops, you can well imagine that there are strong kind of resentments in various parts of the India. But the thing is that whenever religion is brought into the politics, the things take different shape. And the Hindutva has been projected over the period of last 10 years, that means say 2014, and before that since 2002 when Modi was ruling the Gujarat, also when 2002 riots happened. So whenever the politics is mixed with the religion, the things go wild. So I'm expecting that since 80% or more than a plus of 80% of the Indian population are Hindus, so they might go in in favor of whatever the Modi is saying. But they must know, they must analyze that what will happen after 5 years if the same kind of extremist the approach has been taken, or they keep the Modi keeps taking the same kind of hardline position, their future will go in vain. So I think the sanity will prevail among the youth, and they will take right decisions while polling for their next leadership in India.
With your views, Brigadier Ahmed Saeed Minhas, of course, we hope that sanity prevails in India, and we hope that India's youth that is going to be taking a huge part in these elections, they think rationally, they think practically, and they do not come into this whole farce of anti-Pakistan agenda. And of course, we also hope that the political leaders of India, they also realize that this is not going to be solving their problems. Talking against Pakistan, presenting anti-Pakistan narratives to their population is not going to solve the problems of India, and they should focus on the real problems that India is facing instead of blaming everything on Pakistan. Unfortunately, we're short on time. I'd like to thank both of our guests, Brigadier Retired Ahmed Saeed Manhas. Thank you for your time at PTV World. In the studios, we were joined by Altaf Hussain Wani. Thank you for your time as well. It was an honor to have you in the studios. And we'd like to conclude our show with that. But we hope that sanity prevails in India, and this hate mongering, this politics of hatred and intolerance, there should be a stop to it. In these challenging times and these times where there's so much tensions, already heightened tensions in the world, we cannot see that there's further escalation or there's hate mongering narratives going on in the region or in the world at large. So we hope with that some of the quarters in India and in the international community that are listening, they hope and they also play their part in making sanity prevail. With that, we'll conclude today's show. See you same time tomorrow. Till then, stay care.